good. Okay. Well, good morning and welcome. Make sure if you're eating your mango or slurping something that you turn off your video. Or if you're pole dancing, certainly stop your video and then rejoin us.
David's going to call it 5 o'clock to fix my confusion.
We respectfully acknowledge that statewide we are on the ancestral homelands of the indigenous nations that have inhabited these lands since time immemorial, including the Akchin, Akamela Odom, Apache, Colorado River, Fort Mojave, Gila River, Havasupai, Hopi, Wallapai, Navajo, Paiute, Pima, Piposh, Wechan, Yaqui, and Yavapai peoples. Their traditional care and honoring of these lands allow us to be here today. And I have to personally apologize before we start. We are having a lot of construction done at our home. And so you'll hear a lot of interesting variety of noises and voices. And I apologize ahead of time for that. Today is really going to be an informative, probably frustrating, angering forum because we're going we're going to gather the Arizona budget cuts that the state legislature passed. The cuts, the compromises, the catastrophes. This is a public school classroom, in case you hadn't noticed. In August, we do not have a Blue Tuesday forum, so you can go to a cooler clime. Australia is having its summer. You could go there, or New Zealand for a while. But come back in September. On September 30th, we will have our next Blue Tuesday forum. So none in August, but we will have in September. So I want to talk a little bit about activism, and now more than ever. And I will give you some information about what you can do. We are the resistance. And there was two things that I wanted to talk about. First of all, excuse me, I'm shuffling papers. You can't see that. Tom Hartman, I'm sure you all know him as a commentator, and he had an email out a couple of days ago, and he said that there are two times in our nation's history, current events, where it was really important for people to become involved. The first was with Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, and most of us were not alive then when it happened, but it literally flipped the politics and the American economy, turning us, and I'm going to quote him here, from a raw, harsh capitalist system to a democratic socialist system with Social Security, legalized unions, unemployment insurance, a minimum wage, workplace safety rules, massive infrastructure construction, and millions of Americans being employed directly by the government to end poverty. That was in the 1930s. Then 30 years later, with Lyndon Johnson's Great Society producing Medicare, Medicaid, Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, food stamps, low-income housing, National Public Radio, a transformation of our educational system for the better, USAID, Job Corps, Vista, Head Start, a major Social Security expansion, the National Endowment of the Arts, and what was essentially free college. It has taken since the 1930s to have the social network, the programs in place that we, most of us, have treasured and that all of the vulnerable communities have been able to benefit from. What's happened is a reversal of that. And I'm afraid that it's going to take us more than 100 years to rebuild what it took us from the 30s to be able to build. We're seeing the dissolution of programs that aid all of our vulnerable communities. And beyond that, a dissolution of democracy and human and civil rights. So the Concord Project was a right-wing organization that a year ago, 10 years ago, made us aware, not only aware, but not, well, I go ahead and say it, victims of the Tea Party's efforts to take over and to radicalize the GOP. And we know now that the Tea Party that was alarming has evolved into MAGA, which is really destroying democracy and targeting vulnerable communities. So there was a YouTube, and I couldn't get it in time to put it on the on here, but there was a comment in response to this Concord project, which has taken over the things that we value. What's the most powerful political office in the world? It's not the President of the United States. It's precinct committeeman. Now, take a couple of seconds, right? If you are a precinct committee person, pat yourself on the back. What did the Tea Party and what did MAGA do with precinct committee people? They became active, rabid, if you will, at the precinct committee person level. They elected and put into power people at the precinct level that would influence elections and power all the way up to the President of the United States. That's why Trump was elected and reelected. So please, when you see this in my next couple of minutes, please make sure that you contact your local party, Democratic Party or LD, and I'll give you contacts for that. And make sure that you sign up to be a precinct committee person. If you don't know what that is, if you're not sure, contact me. We will tell you, we'll get you in touch with your LD. There are 1,000 points of entry in becoming a precinct committee person. You can go out and canvass, you can make phone calls, you can put packets together, you can sign letters. There are all kinds of things to do. If you want to give 10 minutes a week, or if you want to give 10 hours a week, whatever you can do, just putting your name down and being a precinct committee person will help us get the power that we need from the most important level all the way up to the President of the United States. It is up to us. We're the only ones that could make that difference. And one of the quotes that I want to give you from Save Our Schools was in the newsletter that they sent out this week. And it said, the freezing of congressionally approved K-12 funds, and you know, for every public school district in Arizona, they were losing millions of dollars because of those the Trump frozen K-12 funds. All of a sudden, he reversed it a couple of days ago, and those millions of dollars of funds are coming through to Arizona. Why? Here's what SOS says. It was a test balloon for how strongly Americans were going to react to the withholding of funds for vulnerable children. And what do you think? Just days after that came out, look at all of the resistance, all of the protests, all of the rallies that came out in support of public education. When you protest, when you join a rally, or if you stay at home and sign letters or make phone calls, you are joining masses of people. And that's the only thing that's going to make a difference, is joining these protests. You're not a single person. You are part of this incredible movement. And that's what we need. Numbers make the difference. There will be all kinds of things coming out from this administration. And if there are not people gathered like this, if you are not doing something from your home in your bedroom slippers or joining something like this, then you're not part of the numbers that are going to make a difference. And we're not just in Arizona. We're not just in the United States. These are protests in other countries in support of what we're trying to get back into our country. So please notify your legislative district, your congressional district, the Maricopa County, Arizona Democratic Party. There are all kinds of things that you can join, that you can contact and say, hey, I want to do something. What can I do? I have 5 minutes every week, or 5 minutes every month, or 5 hours every week. Whatever it is that you can start doing, multiply that by 1,000 people who can give 5 minutes a week, and that's powerful. Every week in the or every month, I should say, sorry about that. In the Blue Tuesday Forum, we talk about civic engagement beyond voting, cebv.us. And if you sign up for their newsletter, and it costs nothing, you will be finding out every week what's going on in the state legislature. And again, if you have 5 minutes, they'll tell you what you can do. If you have 5 hours, they can tell you what you can do. And we can help, cebv.us. If you're not sure what to do or how to get on request to speak, they will hold your hand and pull you through the whole process. You don't have to understand or know anything to begin with, except that you want to be a voice. Save Our Schools, Arizona, contact them, get their newsletter. This is the one that came out after Trump unfroze the $6.2 billion in K-12 funding. And again, that wasn't because he had a change of heart or values. That was because the people spoke. There was a collective energy. If you want to get really riled up, our speaker today, Beth Lewis, writes for azmirror.com, and there are all kinds of blogs and essays. And once you get started, you'll get in the weeds, I promise you. You don't have to stay up till 3 or 4 in the morning like I do, clicking on all of these. They're wonderful. So write down these 2 emails, sosarizona.org and azmirror.com. You'll be glad you did. Secular AZ has a website. They also every Friday have speakers, and sometimes they call them Rage Fridays because they'll talk about Christian nationalism, and you'll find out things that you never knew before. Fridays, noon to 1, they're on Zoom. Secular Arizona is a nonpartisan, nonprofit advocacy organization that protects the constitutional separation of church and state and educates lawmakers and the public to ensure freedom of conscience for Arizonans of all faiths and of none. You can go on their website, Secular AZ, just look for, Google for a Secular AZ, and they'll tell you what's happening this week in secular news. Undermining public health and making us all sicker. Andy Biggs no longer cares about releasing Epstein files. Nothing to see here, just the Department of Defense banning books. And all kinds of things that you thought, oh my God, that's happening too. It'll encourage you to get involved. StandInvisibleAZ.org will tell you how you can become involved physically by going to protests and rallies. It'll also tell you how you can get involved by writing letters, making phone calls, doing whatever you are able to do. This one is brand new. And well, it's not brand new, but it's a brand new to me. And I just discovered it last night. And that's why I'm sharing it with you. It's RHRR.US, and it stands for Rush Hour Resistance Rally. Now, if you're looking at something, in Phoenix, Scottsdale, Mesa, Tempe, Chandler, that you might be able to go to, then go to this website. It's very current. So they'll tell you everything that's happening today, this week, and this is what it'll look like. There are dozens of these boxes, and you, like, for example, I live near Cole Park. Well, look, every Tuesday at 6:30 in the morning, I can bring a sign or just join people who are standing on the bridge across the 60 and show my sign, my anti-Trump, my anti-MAGA sign, my pro-public education sign, excuse me. And this is just one of maybe 20, 25 places. And so if you have questions, this is the group that's sponsoring the Cole Park Flyover Bridge. So it gives you the website that you can go to for more information, or you can just go there and join the protest. Help spread the word with printable posters, flyers, leave behinds, and shareable graphics. It is awesome. I don't know how I've missed it, but this is a new site for me, and I would highly recommend that you go and visit RHRR.US, and it stands for Rush Hour Resistance Rally. So do something, anything, but do something, because without it, the people who need to get the message aren't going to get the message. And we have it within our power to make a difference. You, as an individual, can stop what's going on. You can make a difference. You will make a difference. We can reverse it. We need the collective action. We need to work together. That's what happened in the 30s for FDR. That's what happened in the 60s for Lyndon Johnson. We desperately need that now. Okay, so today's program is Arizona budget cuts, compromises, and catastrophes. And our first two speakers this morning are State Representative STACEY TRAVERS. She's the Democratic whip in our Arizona State Legislature, and she's going to talk about the legislative impact on Arizonans like you and me. Our second speaker is Representative Oscar de los Santos, excuse me. And he's also going to talk, he's the Democratic leader, which is big stuff here. And he's going to also talk about the legislative impact on Arizona. Our third speaker is Beth Lewis, the Executive Director of Save Our Schools, Arizona. And she's going to focus in on the legislative impact on public schools. So we have three powerful, powerful speakers that are going to knock your socks off today. And now you have a host of websites that you can go to get information about how you can support these people, the groups they represent, which includes you. So let me go to our first speaker, STACEY. STACEY was born in the birthplace of democracy, Athens, Greece, to a U.S. military father and Greek mother. Coming from a family with a history of military service, she knew she wanted to serve our country and did so proudly as a Russian intelligence interceptor in the U.S. Army. After leaving the military, STACEY came to Arizona to study at the University of Arizona in Tucson, go Wildcats, where she earned her Bachelor of Science in Geosciences. She fell in love with Arizona. She wanted to further her education and left for England and postgraduate study at Oxford University. And by the way, Oscar de los Santos was also a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford University. Shortly after, she met her husband, John, a small business owner, and soon afterwards began working as a radio producer for the BBC. They moved back to the United States, and as a member of AMVETS, Stacey became an advocate for veteran women's issues and homeless and disabled veterans, fighting the corruption and fraud that's currently trying to disenfranchise veterans at the Pacific branch of the National Home for Disabled Veteran Soldiers, a cause she's still committed to. Once Stacey had her 2 girls, she knew the only place she wanted to raise her family was in Arizona, a state that prides itself on fierce independence, love of country, and a strong sense of community. And Stacey, we are thrilled to have you today. And I will, excuse me, let me ask Susie to make you a co-host so you can run your slides from your own computer, if that's what you'd like to do.
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending, and thank you to Janie for inviting me. And I'm so glad that we have an opportunity to speak to Representative De Los Santos. He is the better half of all my acolytes. I was an Oxford dropout, and Oscar was the one that actually did the work and was a good student and finished. And he is so brightly leader of our House caucus. So I'm glad that he could make it today too. And we're going to tag team. We're going to talk a little bit about the budget. And then Representative De Los Santos actually wears 2 hats. He's also co-chair of the ADLCC. So talking with Janie about resistance and activism and what you can do.
Stacey, I'm going to interrupt you. We can't get into alphabet soup. We can't assume. So tell us what the ADLCC is.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That is the Arizona Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee. So once we give you some budget highlights and tell you about some of the incredible work that we're doing, it's how do we continue that work? Interestingly, I just got off of a week with an international delegation of elected officials, and the ones from the United States. It's so interesting to talk to them because they live in such a different alternate reality. We have members that were in South Carolina who really are in a minority, as the supermajority in Arizona runs the legislature. They get treated like a super minority. We are not a super minority. We are just a few seats away, and yet we also get treated as though we are a super minority. And so the drive and the desire for us to take the majority next year is strong. And so hopefully Representative De Los Santos, after talking about the budget, will be able to speak to some of the plans that we have on turning the state legislature blue. So thank you, Susie, for that link if anybody else wants to see it. How do I've never done this. So how do I work slides? How do I get away from me? All I can see is me, and I don't really need to see me.
You are a co-host, so whatever is on your screen should be showing.
Oh yes. Oh, okay. Well, if you have them, can you navigate them?
Oh, you want me to do that?
Yes, please.
Sure. No problem. Whoops.
I'm not technologically advanced. You can see the look on Representative De Los Santos's face because he knows how useless in the technology field I am. I can barely use the Googles.
So I'm going to go back because I had advanced mine. And let me begin with an apology to the group. You had beautiful backgrounds for your slides, and I could not get them to.
I mean, let me see.
Yeah, hold on. Okay,
yeah, I don't
go into.
And thank you everybody for I've never done this sort of thing, so it's clear that I don't know what I'm doing. Oh yeah.
Okay. We'll do this.
Thank you. So these were some of I want to start out the process by saying that this year it felt completely different than it had in the past 2 years. Representative De Los Santos and the leadership team very early on said to the governor that, if you want the Democratic caucus's buy-in, that you need to include us in the conversations. And they took that very much to heart and made sure that caucus leaders and the Appropriations Committee were part of the conversation from the very beginning. And it had a completely different look and feel, I think, for both the governor's office and for the Democratic House the legislators. I can't speak to the Senate because I'm not a senator and I wasn't privy to any of the real conversations that they had. But I can tell you from our end, Representative De Los Santos and the team made sure that everybody was continually informed, continually educated about all the different buckets that I'm going to go through, setting expectations, what the realities on the ground were. And I will let Beth speak to, the K through 12 education. Nobody got anything that they really 100% of what they wanted. And as a public school parent, that makes me incredibly disappointed. But was it Shirley Chisholm that once said, if you're not at the table, that you're on the menu? And that's how it's felt the last 2 years. And it doesn't feel like that now. I don't know if any of my colleagues will agree with me, but it definitely it definitely had a very different feel. We felt very much like we were listened to and that we had input into how the budget was shaped. And what we managed to achieve was, considering the political climate and the money that we had, was nothing short of really amazing. Again, with the elephant in the room, the ESAs, I have no words. I really don't. And the hypocrisy is not lost on all of us. And I make sure that I let everybody know that every minute that I have to talk to somebody, whether they're in the state or out of the state, know what an egregious boondoggle this whole ESA is, and how it's really, destroying our public education system, and how this is really the end goal of privatizing. So spreading the word to everybody so that they know that if it's coming to a town near them, that they need to be prepared for the fight, because it's a hard one. So anyway, this is some of the things that we got in the budget. K through 12, we did get the opportunity weight. We did get the additional assistance for classroom supplies, the $3.8 million for free school meals that the Republicans were using as a sort of leveraging cudgel against the Democrats, which were really happy, the $3.4 million for the on-track student success, the $500 to equip public high schools with the defibrillators. That was run by a Republican, but it was very much supported by both Democrats and Republicans alike. The AEL expenditure waiver for 2 years, so that they can, at least this is not a fight that we're going to have, coming into an election year where Republicans might want to sort of put their stakes down and not work with us. So we've got 2 years to that before we go ahead and fight that good fight again. Next slide, please. Oh, I've always wanted to say that. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Childcare. I was lucky enough to go to a White House conference, all states conference on childcare. What we would like to do ultimately is try to mirror the program that's in Michigan, which is absolutely incredible. I'm working with some of the cities in LD12, like Chandler, who is very concerned about the childcare issue and how we create public-private partnerships, how we make it affordable, but not just affordable, how do we make it accessible? Not just accessible to the parents, but how do we make it accessible for companies to want the buy-in, to understand that, you know, the workforce that you want and that you need is very much contingent on childcare. And so this isn't an entitlement, it's not an indulgence. You know, this is something that when you're looking at workforce development holistically, acknowledging that people have kids. And so, you know, we need to make sure that everybody has, number one, access to childcare, and also that we have access to providers. And how do we create that provider growth that's able to accommodate the needs of families, regardless of whether they work a 9-to-5 job or not? Having had a tour of the Coca-Cola company, they run 24 hours. And, you know, if you're on shift work, then, you know, how do you have access to childcare? We need to create the provider community to be able to accommodate all of our workforce when we can. 45 million to expand childcare. As we all know, most recently, the governor just announced that over 500 families were going to be taken care of on this, you know, childcare wait list, and 3 million for after school and summer childcare, 100,000 for a study to offer childcare to state employees. Next slide, please. Higher education. Oscar, do you want to weigh in on this? I know this is something that I'm just going to drop you in it now. I mean, I could read the slides, but there's speed bonds to make sure that all 3 universities are funded. There's adult education, community college promise program. You've just been made a co-host. Do you want to say anything about this?
Sure, yeah. And first and foremost, thank you everybody for having me. Oscar de los Santos. I represent South Phoenix, Laveen, Guadalupe, parts of downtown Phoenix. And yeah, so this is actually one of the most exciting parts of the budget, I think. Lots of good stuff in here. Lots of work left to do, but really in higher education, we got some very important wins. So I can tick down the list here. The Arizona Promise Program is an incredibly important program that allows low-income students and middle-income students to attend Arizona's public universities for free, tuition free. And so the way it works is you apply, you get a Pell Grant, which is federal assistance for tuition. And then after that, you know, that covers some of it, but it doesn't cover the entire tuition. And so that's where the Arizona Promise Program kicks in, and it covers the remaining portion of your tuition, which is incredibly important for Arizona working class students. And you know, I had the huge privilege of going to college. My parents instilled in me the value of education and higher education. Both my parents were born in a very, very tiny town of 5,000 people in rural Mexico. And they were born there, their parents were born there, grandparents born there. And one, I don't know how my parents are still together. They've literally known each other since birth. That is mind-boggling. But here they are. But the second thing is, you know, my mom had to stop going to school around the 2nd grade because she had the oldest daughter in the family and had to care for her younger siblings. And so that's just sort of how it went. So for their children, education became incredibly important, and I could not have gone to college certainly without the help of federal assistance programs and tuition assistance programs like the Promise Program. So I personally know how incredibly important this is, and this is actually the most money we have ever in the state of Arizona's history invested in this kind of tuition assistance. So it is incredibly important. We also did something very similar for the community colleges. We created the Community College Promise Program, and for the first time in Arizona history, are going to be making sure that working class students in Arizona attend community colleges tuition free. So those are 2 of the very, very big and exciting wins that we got here for higher education. Representative Travers, your hand is up.
Yeah, you're going to probably pivot next to the Arizona Teachers Academy, and we got $9 million for that. But most importantly, we managed to kill the expansion to private universities. There was a piece of legislation that went through last session where they were trying to expand this Arizona Teachers Academy to Grand Canyon University. And we managed to kill that bill and make sure that it stays within the public university Teachers Academy programs.
Absolutely. That is important. And the Teachers Academy provides support and tuition assistance for students who are going to go on to become public school teachers. And so it's an incredibly important program. I talked about the College Promise. There's $10 million for adult education programs. These are programs where people who didn't complete high school can go to the community colleges or other nonprofit programs, get their GED, get their high school diploma, get vocational training. So this is really workforce development for some of the most vulnerable people in our state. And so there's $10 million in there for that, which is fantastic. $1.5 million for people who high school students who want to, are ambitious and want to take the next step and are taking community college classes at the same time that they're in high school. And so this covers the cost of the community college tuition. So it's great. It allows our high school students to be more competitive, to, take the next step, and also is a great money saver because when those students enter college, they have to take fewer courses there because they already took them and they don't have to pay for them, which is great. We have a nursing shortage in our state, so we're investing a couple $1 million to graduate more nurses out of our community college program. We're investing $2 million in the arts. We know that at the federal level, the entire National Endowment for the Arts was cut under the Trump budget, and so we're trying to fill in, not all, but some of that gap. The arts are incredibly important, especially at a time, when our democracy is under assault. Artists really are sometimes at the forefront of telling it how it is. Rep. Travers. You are on mute, Representative Travers.
Once again, there were lots of the Republicans were going to put zero money into the arts. This was something that community members reached out to all of us on, wanting some kind of Arts Commission funding. So, once again, the Democrats led the charge on trying to get some money to make sure that the Arts Commission was funded at least in some way this year.
Yeah.
And then 1.2 for the Rural Development Council for Rural Economic Development. Oscar, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's funding to make sure, that rural Arizona has jobs and is bringing in new employers so that people have access to income, which is incredibly important. The last thing I'll say here is there was a really awful, gross provision that the Republicans wrote in that we kicked out of the budget, which is, if you remember in 2022, the state of Arizona came together and said, hey, Dreamers deserve in-state tuition. And the voters passed that at the ballot box. They were trying to repeal that and kill it. And it was bad public policy. It's terrible law, but it's also inspired obviously by the racism and awful things happening at the federal level. And so we're very proud that we killed that proposal and Dreamers are still eligible for in-state tuition. So
next slide, please.
Thank you, Rep. Travers.
Housing and homelessness. This is another big concern for members across the state of Arizona. I will talk about a little bit of the $2 million Homes for Heroes that provide direct support and social services to veterans facing homelessness. Every year we try to get some money in the budget. This year, part of looking at how a veteran gets treated, and that includes in the housing space, is helping veterans holistically. So we had, for the first time ever, $750,000 for the expansion and establishment of what's called Veterans Treatments Courts. And those operate in a different way than just being in front of a judge and being sentenced to jail. It's taking a look at what the inherent cause of this problem was. Did you get, caught, you got caught speeding? Why were you speeding? Because, I don't know, maybe you were high. Why were you high? Because you've got PTSD. How do we treat that through, a program? It has a 92% success rate, 8% recidivism. That was something that Representative de los Santos helped support me in trying to accomplish. So thank you so much for that,
I'll cut in here and say that Representative Travers was an absolute champion for this funding, and it would not be in there without your work. So
That's very kind of you to say, but once again, I defer to Representative De Los Santos, who made sure that my voice got heard. And so thank you, thank you so much. And I think it speaks to the incredible mutual respect that we both have for each other, that we managed to get this. It was something that was very, very important to the veteran community, something that I had heard about over the last several years as co-chair of the Veterans Caucus. And so it includes how we address homelessness and housing for veterans as part of this holistic treatment, as well as the money that gets allocated to the actual, brick and mortar structures that help veterans. And Vic Peterson has just joined the meeting, and he will tell you. Vic, are you there? Vic will tell you how important this was. We also have. It's funny, a lot of people don't understand that the Department of Economic Security tends to be more than just unemployment checks. A lot of things go through the Department of Economic Services, including First Things First, which is another sort of wheelhouse, spoke in the wheel of, childhood early education. We've got services to help with eviction prevention, how to help with homeless response to rehousing youth and families. We managed to keep, they were trying to cut the 211 services. We managed that the 211 services still stayed alive. Does everybody know what the 211 services are? That's the number that you call if you've got any sort of housing related issues. The state helps manage you or connect you to resources and opportunities. And then we had $900,000 for the State Historic Preservation Office. Next slide, please. Water and environment. So this morning I was at the ceremonial signing of SB 1611, which was a piece of legislation that we had been working on through the Governor's Water Policy Council. And in a bipartisan effort, what it does is it allows, it's a water conservation method that allows farms to be converted to housing. So if a farmer wants to sell part of his land, they can go ahead and build affordable housing on it. It will save over 5 or 6 years, I think, more than 10 million acre feet, which is how water is measured. It's measured in acre feet as a volume. And it was necessary. Then it also allows for the transfer of water from without, and I know, Janie, time is brief, but anyway, without getting too far into the weeds, it allows us to transfer water because we have to have a 100-year assured water supply when you build. And what this does is it allows for the transfer of water from transfer basins, for example, the Harquahala Basin, over into Queen Creek and Buckeye so that they can meet their 100-year supply requirement. It wasn't the best piece of legislation, but it moves us forward. And so what I think going into next year will happen, I think the cycle will be that we'll try to address rural groundwater once again, which we were unable to achieve this year. And then once we get the rural groundwater legislation hopefully done this year, we'll go back and address some of the concerns that some people had with this piece of legislation that was just signed, which is called the Ag to Urban bill. And so there was $30 million for wildfire suppression programs, $9 million for water quality, $3 million for the Colorado. We expect that there will be continued negotiations over Arizona's allocation of water from the Colorado River. And I think part of this legislation that we just passed, while not perfect, along with a lot of the other measures that we are utilizing, shows that we are good stewards of water, and that strengthens our case. So when we go into negotiations and say we want this water, we need this water, we deserve this water, we can show that we're not just being irresponsible with the allocation of water. Having said that, everybody wants a piece. There are other states that also want to continue to grow. They want their allocation of water. And so there has been some money that has been put in a bank providing for any potential litigation from any of the other basin states that's going to arise, which we expect that there might come up. $2 million for toxic mining and smelter cleanup, $2 million for agriculture and water innovation program, $1 million for the state parks heritage fund, and then $700 for additional staffing at the Department of Water Resources. They need a few more full-time employees to help deal with some of the implementation of some of the legislation that's coming through and some of the expected extra work for the Colorado River negotiations. Next slide, please. $170 million to fully fund services for individuals with health developmental with the DDD. So I don't know if you guys were aware, this year it was a very, very big battle. It was a program that was initially begun under the Ducey administration because of COVID. With all the quarantining that we had to do, it was difficult to have providers come in and care for children and adults with disabilities. So there was an allowance made if you were a family member that was caregiving for a parent, if you're a parent caring for a child or caring for a family member. You had to meet the same requirements as other caregivers. So you had to be certified, you had to be, you have to clock in, you have to clock out. When Governor Hobbs took office, we continued the program. And so there was a shortfall of funding. The Republicans wanted to cut that shortfall and cut the program, which, as we know, there's always an incredible dearth of caregivers because they're paid less than McDonald's workers. And so there was a real fight. The behavior from the Republicans was absolutely unbelievable. They wouldn't let anybody speak in committee hearings. They stacked the committees knowing to vote a certain way so that certain bills would fail. And really the disability, when Janie talks about activism and, sort of resisting and making your voice heard, this community came together in a way that I haven't seen since my time in office. It was really quite astounding. And so they had their voices heard. There were so many of us in the legislature that advocated for them, and we managed to get those funding services for them. $7 million for area agencies on aging and housing for the elderly. Something I'm going to be working on next session is how we deal with elderly in care. There's a AG's report that came out in 2022 that hasn't really been fully implemented. AG and IG. So we'll be working on that. DCS foster care extended, $4 million for graduate medical education. We have a doctor shortage. We're looking towards filling these slots in rural areas.
Stacey,
Please.
this is Janie, and I'm going to interrupt.
You're cutting us short.
Because I want to have some time before.
Yeah,
that.
$3 million for tribal health care. I mean, the slides will become available. Do you want to go to the next slide? I think we're almost done.
This program is being recorded and it will be posted on the YouTube. So if you're madly making notes, wait till it's on the YouTube and then you can share it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you want just the slides, get a hold of myself or Janie and we'll make sure that we get these out to you. You can see PPS. Yeah. I mean, it was a really good budget, and most of the stuff that you see here was not necessarily on this slide, but on all the slides, it was fought for by the Democrats, and especially the Democrats in the House, of which I'm incredibly proud of, and very proud to call Representative De Los Santos a colleague. So that's me.
Oh, thanks, Stacey. We've heard from Oscar a little bit, but I do want to read his bio. I love that picture of you as a child. I think that's adorable. Oscar de los Santos serves as a representative for District 11, as well as the Democratic Minority Leader, the highest ranking Democrat in the chamber. Born to working class immigrant parents, Oscar has dedicated his life and career to public service and progressive values. As a teacher at a low-income school in South Phoenix, he's been on the front lines of the fight for better funded schools and better teacher pay. As head of public policy at the Association of Arizona Food Banks, he represented Arizona's 1,200 food banks and food pantries in the Arizona legislature and in Congress. He fought for state laws that promote economic justice and won. Working in partnership with local community groups, the legislature, and the governor, he successfully led the fight to pass a bill that doubled the state's cash assistance program for low-income families. He also spearheaded a coalition that passed legislation to restore access to food assistance programs for people with felony records. Oscar has been recognized locally and internationally for his leadership. He was awarded a Rhodes Scholarship at Oxford University. And my father was a Rhodes Scholar too, so I understand how fabulous that is. And he was invited by the White House to a private meeting with President Obama. Oscar has been a tireless advocate for workers' rights, protecting voting rights, taking on corporate corruption, ensuring educators are paid fair wages, and for equality for all Arizonans. And I just want to add, Stacy, and for Representative Dos Santos, you represent our values. I can't imagine any advocates or champions that would work harder or tirelessly for our values. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Here. Let me stop the share. Okay, go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Is this mine?
Yes, there
Oh,
you are.
sorry. I thought we were up. No, I guess I'll be very, very brief here. You saw there are tremendous wins. This is the largest investment in childcare in more than 10 years, in higher education, more than 10 years. But there is so much more work to do. We were able to staunch the bleeding with our public schools. You know, we ensured that there were zero cuts. We're providing free school meals for our public school students. But the truth is that we still rank 49th in education. And that is a tragedy, a travesty, and a slap in the face to our students, our parents, and our educators. And one of the biggest reasons we rank so poorly in terms of per pupil funding is because of the ESA program, which is siphoning off over $1 billion a year that should be going to our classrooms. And so as much as, you know, I believe that Democrats did as well as we could have in this budget cycle, but we could have done so much better if we were in the majority. So much better. And the truth is that, you know, 2 or 3 seats makes a world of difference. It will make a world of difference for our students if we can just flip a couple of seats that we lost in 24 by just a couple of hundred votes. And so, you know, if you think about it, it's astounding that in a state of millions and millions of people, just a small handful of votes in a small number of districts can make such a titanic difference. And so I think 2026 could be a good year for Democrats. I think there's going to be a backlash against Trump's overreach and extremism. I think a lot of our base is motivated to vote. But the truth is, we can't take anything for granted. We have to get out there, and we have to get out there early and often. And so you've heard about so many ways to get involved. I wanted to give a plug to the ADLCC, the Arizona Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee. We're the only organization in Arizona that is solely and exclusively dedicated to flipping the Arizona House blue and flipping the Arizona Senate blue. And we are so close to doing it. Yeah, landslide maze, absolutely. You see how just 200 votes makes a complete difference. And so we are 33 Republicans in the House, 27 Democrats. We've just got to flip 4 seats. I think we can do it. But please get involved, whether that's making a donation, knocking on doors, writing postcards, doing what you can. And we have fabulous partners, including Save Our Schools, who you'll hear from. And I think Beth, nobody better in the state than Beth to make the case about why ESAs are such a travesty and why we need to flip this legislature to have a pro-public school majority. And so I will leave my remarks there. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any, either here or in the chat, but I will relinquish it here. So thank you so much, everybody, for having me.
Thanks so much for being with us today, Oscar. I wish we had another 6 hours for the program, but we don't. Our next guest, Beth Lewis, is the executive director of Save Our Schools Arizona, and please go to the website sosarizona.org. It's unbelievable the resources that you can get simply online. There are themed publications that you can have, the impacts of universal ESA vouchers, the uneven playing field that we've had in Arizona for decades in public education and vouchers, just everything. You've got to go to that website. And if you haven't subscribed for the email letters and getting those resources, you'll be so thrilled and informed when you do. Let me read about our special guest, Beth. And the reason I put the picture of her kids up there is because that's why Beth has worked so hard for public education, her 2 kids. Beth is a mom, public education advocate, and K-12 policy expert who fights for fully and equitably funded schools for all Arizona children. Beth has taught elementary and middle school in Arizona for 12 years and has been named a Rodell Exemplary Teacher and Tempe Diablo's Teacher of the Year finalist. She holds a BA from the University of Notre Dame and a master's in education from ASU. As director of Save Our Schools Arizona, Beth works to bring parents, educators, elected officials, business leaders, and community members together in support of Arizona's public schools, which strengthen our communities and our great state. Please reach out to Beth at beth@sosarizona.org. Beth, we are thrilled and delighted to have you with us today.
Hi everyone. Thank you for such a warm welcome, Jeannie and Janie. And it's so good to see my kids. I do fight for my kids, and I'm also, as a classroom educator, I think that's probably my biggest motivation, having taught in Title I schools for 12 years and being out of the classroom. I just miss it so very much. But I'm so honored to get to fight for public schools every single day. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much to Representative Travers and Representative De Los Santos. I think they gave an amazing rundown, but I just want to really say that I saw them fight so very hard, and they're in such a difficult position. They are treated so horribly by their colleagues on the other side of the aisle. And so just know that you have these great champions fighting down there. And I love all of this talk about flipping our state legislature, because that truly is the path to victory. So I don't have a ton of great news for you all today when it comes to presenting on K-12 education in Arizona, especially around the legislature and federal policy right now. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, but I do have a ton of hope. And so I will make sure to stop and smell the roses and share some hope with you along the way, because I always have hope. So thanks for being here. I think a lot of you know about Save Our Schools Arizona. I'm a little short on time, so I'm going to speed through some opening stuff, but you all know we're nonpartisan. We're fighting for public schools. We believe that children deserve excellent quality public schools in their neighborhoods. We love public schools because they are community, and the community is public schools, and there's nothing more important to our state, but also to our democracy. We also, if you're talking to folks that don't have kids in public schools, we know that great public schools lead to great communities, safe communities, better property values, and they help our economy. And they're just the best investment that our state can make. And we try to tell our Republican friends down at the legislature that all the time. And I don't know, it's just not getting through to them, but we're going to keep trying. A lot has been said today about the legislative session. And, I just have one session on the recap. Governor Hobbs vetoed so many attacks on our public schools. We are so grateful to have that backstop. I have friends in Florida that are telling me the kinds of laws that are being passed by their legislature and signed into law by Governor DeSantis. And I just got to tell you, the votes for Governor Hobbs are just, every door that you knock, everybody that you tell to vote for her, it's worth it for that, because she is protecting our kids, our teachers, in a major, major way. As our representatives have already said, there were no reforms for vouchers this year. It's a really unfortunate situation. We're stuck in a gridlock down there, and something's got to give. We only got the 2% inflationary increase for K-12 schools, even though costs are more like 8 to 10% higher. We're in a bad situation. We are 48th, like Rep. De Los Santos said. And the only other thing I'll say is that, there's been some kind of like talk about surplus and, all of this like weird budgeting that goes back and forth each year. But right now, the projections for the next few years are really scary. And part of that is because of the Trump tariffs and economic uncertainty. Part of that is because of Ducey's flat tax to benefit the rich. And a big part of that is also because of the voucher program. So just know that, our state budget already is not good enough to help our public schools. It's not enough to do a lot of the things that our reps said that they want to do more of. But we're going to be looking at cuts in the next few years. So it's a little scary. Again, things that you probably already know. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. I want to get to the federal stuff because we haven't talked about that today. But as an educator, this is why I'm fighting. When we talk about being 49th in the country, 48th in the country in funding, people say, well, who cares? Money can't solve the problem. That is not true. Money in public education is absolutely critical for our kids to learn and to keep our teachers, the most important things we need to do. We have the second most crowded class sizes in the US. Our teacher salaries are abysmal. Our student to counselor ratio is the second worst in the US, which means that a lot of times kids are not getting what they need when it comes to mental health services. And that's true with social workers, psychologists. Our kids really need these services, and we have one counselor to every 667 kids in this state. So you think of a giant junior high school, they might only have one counselor to serve or not serve all of those kids' needs. In our school facilities, we got a little bump in the budget this year. We're still massively in the hole, and a lot of our school districts are having to go out for things like bonds and overrides in order to fill that hole. So if you have a bond or override this year, please vote yes. And then, we've got the voucher program. It was alluded to several times in this presentation. I think that folks know this, but I never want to assume. The program has skyrocketed. It's mostly going to wealthy, more white families in rich suburbs where people were already in private school. They're already choosing homeschool, and they could already afford those choices. It is not, it is promoting things like really weird curriculum that people are teaching, like flat earther theory. There are people that are buying things like, refrigerators and KitchenAid mixers for their kitchens. It's a lot of grift. There's no accountability. There's no transparency. There have been a ton of amazing stories. Craig Harris at 12 News has been doing some really amazing deep dives on all of this. I'll put our Substack in the chat when I'm done, and we cover everything that he uncovers. And unfortunately, now the other shoe is dropping, and we've got public schools closing left and right. We've got public schools having to lay off teachers because, there was already no fat to trim, and now we've got this $1 billion program. This graph, I think it's just really eye-opening. Forgive me for the chart having 1,000 million that, is $1 billion. But you can see that the program has been around for a while, and it was just a small program targeted to students who really, really needed it, students with disabilities, etc. And then Ducey came in 2022, even though voters rejected it in 2018, and said, we're just going to do this unbudgeted, unaccountable, universal voucher. No questions asked, no cap. You don't have to earn it in any way. You can be a billionaire. And here we are. So it's going to be $1 billion this year. And that is all money that is now off the table for teacher and staff pay. It's off the table for smaller class sizes. It's all a huge opportunity cost, right? And we know that our public schools desperately need this funding. And I mean, I can go into all of this. Here are all of these real world impacts that vouchers are having on our local schools. But I think the most important thing to say is that all of this is on purpose. The defunding of public schools, the passing of these vouchers, having no accountability in Arizona's program. This is all part and parcel of what we've seen roll out in Arizona. It was all written in Project 2025. And now it's hitting the feds, the national scene, with President Trump and Secretary McMahon, and it's not good. It's really, really scary right now. However, people are really paying attention, all of us and so many others, like Janie said at the beginning of this, and people are standing up. They're fighting back. And I think we have to know what's happening. We have to know what the threats are so we can tell our friends and neighbors. But our lawmakers, I mean, if you think of Siscomani, Schweikert, even Crane, they are very vulnerable in the next election. And public education is really popular in their districts. It's really highly utilized. And so if they hear from us, there is a good chance we can fight back against a lot of this. We've got Linda McMahon here. She's famous from the WWE. She has already said that she wants to dismantle the Department of Education. She called it the final mission the first day that she was hired or confirmed. And then in March, they made massive cuts and layoffs to the Department of Education. And unfortunately, that was upheld by the Supreme Court on July 14th. So you can see that timeline is happening really quickly in our country. It's not just the Department of Ed, of course, that's just kind of my purview. But they said they were going to shut down the Department of Ed, and they're doing it. Right now we've seen, with that executive order, there was a threat. So many of you may have heard and advocated, thank you, on June 30th, the Trump administration said that they were freezing $6.2 billion in K-12 funding unilaterally, unlawfully. And people spoke up. They rose up. They said, you cannot do this. This is unlawful. This is congressionally approved funding. This is for students who are learning English, for before and after school care, right? And they finally unfroze the funding just last Friday. So that's good news. Arizona schools, many of them are already in session. That funding threw everybody into chaos and uncertainty, which is entirely the point. We know that the big ugly budget slashed funding for public schools, and we are in for the fight of our lives the next couple of months. So many of you know that there will be a federal budget that must pass by October 1st. What is not being widely publicized, and I'm going to try and fix that, is that there are $12 billion in K-12 cuts. And what we can't say, I mean, that is theoretically going to be approved by Congress in this budget. And so we are going to need folks to really, really rise up, doubly rise up, triply, to say, no, we cannot have these cuts to our public schools and these programs. So please stay tuned to us for that, to your local education association, where people are going to be speaking about this and unpacking everything that is being threatened. But it is really, really dangerous what they're trying to do. And of course, they passed a federal voucher bill. We've never had federal vouchers. They acted very quickly. There's no cap to it. It can be used as a tax credit for the rich. It's really not a huge surprise for us here in Arizona. This was really aimed at accelerating vouchers in blue states, but it can be stacked on an ESA voucher in Arizona. So you better believe that people are going to be lining up for their federal dollars if they're already receiving state dollars. And the budgetary impacts are going to be huge. So unfortunately, we were not able to stop that one. But the next fight is for the Department of Education. I hope that you will tell your friends and neighbors if they say, well, why do we need a U.S. Department of Education? I thought that they just do like boring things like send money to the states. That is not true. The Department of Education is critically important because it protects kids, right? We've got lawyers that are protecting the civil rights of our children with disabilities, Black and brown children, Native children, homeless children. And then we've got all these programs that are incredible for our kids. They're trying to say that we can just return this to the states. I don't know if any of you follow a guy named Superintendent Tom Horn, but I do not trust him to distribute this funding in a fair and successful way for our kids. So any talk of returning it to the states is really, really scary to me. We also have the legislature we have. So any conversation like that, maybe remind friends, family, neighbors that the Department of Ed is really important. And also the states are not, our state is not known to administer education very well. And then the last piece I'll say, again, I've already said this is by design, right? Like they're trying to dismantle public education. It starts with the Department of Ed. It starts with messing with the funding and the programs. But when they try and return things to the states, there's no legal protection for kids. And we've seen this before. Right? This is from the book Mothers of Massive Resistance. It's a great read. But in post-Brown society, right, all the segregationists rose up and they just wanted the money to go back to the states for states' rights, because what that meant was in the South in particular, in red states, they didn't have to protect kids anymore. And we don't want to go back to that. We're not going back to the 50s. We're not going back to segregation. And we're not going back to our country before there were legal protections for kids with disabilities, because that was another form of segregation until 1979. And so we know this is a setup to try and divert as much funding to private schools as possible, but it's also a stripping of rights and services for our most vulnerable students. And so we've got to inform ourselves. We've got to speak up. We've got to help organize, in whatever capacity that you have. And again, just talking to friends and neighbors about this is bigger than just some bureaucratic department in DC. That's not what it is, right? It's about the privatization of our public schools. It's about taking away the public good. And, they're being successful right now, but they can't if we stand up. So I really, really hope that you all that you'll join us. I'm glad to take any questions. Again, not a ton of great news, but we can stop this. So I hope that you'll consider joining one of our local teams. We can always come present to local groups in your community. We do that all the time, even if it's just, 4 friends in a living room, we're happy to do it. If you have a club that meets on Zoom, we're happy to do it. And we just hope that you'll be able to support our work, to support public schools in any way that you can. And just really appreciate being able to talk with you all today.
Beth, that was fantastic. And what I want to say is repeat of what I said in the beginning, and that is that we really have to work hard. We can't just sit back and say, oh, I don't like this. I don't like where it's going. The Republican platform, which is what they hold all of their electeds and candidates to, The Republican platform section on public education calls for its dissolution. They are open about that, and they are sticking to their platform when they start doing everything that you're reporting on. And part of it is, yes, numbers. I mean, if they get 500 letters instead of one, that could make a difference. But I really want to make a plug for SOS. If I think to myself, well, I mean, I've been a teacher or a retired teacher for let's see, 61 years. So that's a long time. I love public education. I committed my lifetime to it. But I don't know. I am not an expert on what's going on in my local district, in Arizona, in the United States on public education. For that, I go to SOS. That is my primary source on what's really happening and what can I do about it. If I just write a letter and it's received, that's wonderful. But if I go through SOS, then I can focus what I'm saying. I can focus my voice, and I can be part of an organization that is that. It's organized and focused to protect public education. So, number one, each one of us has to be a number. We have to do whatever we can individually. But the second part of that, the flip of the coin, is that we have to associate with organizations. SOS is a perfect one, so that we know what's going on. We're aware of it. We can focus what we're saying and doing and sharing with friends and colleagues. So sosarizona.org. And you still have a few minutes, Beth, if somebody wants to put a question in the chat, Beth, or I can look in the chat for you.
I saw
Uh,
some really smart comments that I just
Oh,
really
yes.
truly agreed with. And it's so nice to talk with such a plugged in group too. I know we can't all know everything, but you all know so much about education. And so
I did want to say, yes, and you'd think that I, after 61 years, would be right on top of it, but there's so much I do not know. And I realize that when I get on the SOS Arizona Network, .org, that, oh my God, I didn't know this was happening. I didn't know. I mean, for vouchers to buy a new $45,000 car because a 16-year-old is learning how to drive. That's not what I want my education money to go to. Let's see. Oh yes, I wanted to say something that that David Shapiro used to say all the time. He said, people tell me that money's not the silver bullet. How the heck do we know? We've never tried it.
aw, we miss David. He's a good guy.
So if you have a particular question, we have enough time if you want to raise your hand, if it takes too long to type in it. If you have a question for Beth. If we do nothing else today, I hope that we get everyone on Blue Tuesday to go to the sosarizona.org and sign up. Those essays, those themed pieces are incredible. And personally, Beth, the azmirror.org got me all fired up. And it takes a lot to get me all fired up at 3 o'clock in the morning. But those pieces that you've written are just phenomenal, just phenomenal.
Thank you.
Mhm. So Beth did put something in the chat. The emails that come out weekly, and that is like the newsletter that you're talking about, and that has so much in it. And it had the little quote that I used earlier. See if I can find it with all my papers here. Nope, I can't. But I do wanna, yes, the freezing of congressionally approved K-12 funds was a test balloon for how strongly Americans were going to react to the withholding of funds for vulnerable children. So, absolutely, that's a call for us, each one of us, to do something. And if you're not sure and you want the most efficacious way to have your voice heard, go to SOS Arizona.
Janie,
Yes.
this is Linda here. If I just may interrupt for a minute, I'm looking on chat and I think there's two very good questions
Right.
for Beth, who's still with us. Suzanne
So-
Lee said, those instances of misuse of funds, is there somewhere we can access that information or monitor it? And then Sandy Bondi said, how do we support teachers with school supplies? Can Beth
I-
answer those questions for us?
Yeah, so Suzanne, I just put a link in the chat. It's not perfect and it might need to be a little updated, but we do have kind of a good collection of news articles that go through some of the fraud, abuse, and waste. So I think that might be sort of what you're looking for. Sandra, that is a good question. A lot of times our Democrat LDs have done back to school drives, which we just appreciate so much. We have sometimes we tried to do some drives, but we sometimes run into issues with districts. And so we've been leaning into LDs instead. But you can drop things off to any school. And I would say one really good way to get things targeted is through Donors Choose. Um, I don't love that we have to do this, right? Just little caveat there, but it is a place where you can search for people close to your zip code, and you can specifically check a box that says that you would like to support, I forget how they phrase it, but essentially Title I schools, right? Low income student populations. And so that's what I always do. I'll kind of peek in there and say, oh, wow, okay, there's a school not too far from me. It's Title I. This teacher is looking for, these whiteboards to help her students teach math. That feels really good. And I do a donation. I also would say, just having been in the classroom, there is not a school near you that doesn't need paper, pencils, colored pencils, dry erase markers. As a teacher, I mean, those are the things that we go through so quickly. And even just, dropping off some donuts on a Friday morning and saying we appreciate you, you'd be shocked how little we get of that. And it really, really brightens teachers' days. So anything I can do.
Beth, this is Janie again. Thank you so much for that, idea of going through the donors. And I know there are a lot of groups that do like the backpack school supply drives at the beginning of the year, but teachers need supplies all year long. And what I did was go to the Tempe schools and talk to I forget where her name is, Michelle Grimaldi. And she said, it's true. The kids will take those backpacks home. The supplies never make it back to school. So the teachers don't have access to the supplies that were given to the kids, which is wonderful that the kids now have supplies at home, which they would not have had before. But teachers need classroom supplies all year long. And you can find out what those are and the teachers, the classrooms that need it the most. Thank you, Beth. That was great help. Sorry that we're out of time, but please, if you do nothing else today, please go to sosarizona.org. You will be informed. You will be an advocate, a champion for public education, and you'll know exactly what to say, how to say it, when to say it. And it'll add tremendously to the numbers. I want to read a quote from Robert Reich from this morning. He says, living a moral life in an age of bullies, which we're doing, requires collective action. It cannot be done alone. Each of us must organize and participate in a vast network of moral resistance. This is what civilization demands. It's what the struggle for social justice requires. It's why that struggle is so critical today and why we all must be part of it. And again, we all value public education. It is part of our DNA. To find out how to be the most efficacious, please go to sosarizona.org. And thank you again, Beth, and Stacy and Oscar. We really appreciate what you continue to do for us. Just a brief reminder as we go off, there's no Blue Tuesday on August, but September 30th, we'll be back with our Blue Tuesday forum, and you will get emails about that. So thank you all. We appreciate every one of you. Thank you for being a participant this morning. Special thanks to Beth and Stacy and Oscar. We appreciate and love you for the work that you continue to do for our values. Bye, everybody. Have a good 2 months, and we'll see you in September.
Thank you all for coming. Be well.
Thank you. Thank you, Janie.